Well, hi, I'm Al Stroud, and in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the power supply on your iPhone. If you have used an iPhone for a while, you probably remember some things that were different back in the old days. So I'm going to switch you over so you can see my screen now. I am doing this video in September of 2022, and I'm using iOS 6.02, I believe. So I'm going to switch over now where you can see my screen. So now you can see my screen on my phone. And I just want to take a second to show you what I'm talking about here. Up in the right-hand corner, we have a little battery symbol. Those of you who have had a phone for several years may remember that earlier on, a few years ago, this used to give you a percentage of battery power that you have remaining. And then that went away a couple of changes ago in the operating system. And what they did in iOS 16 is bring that back. So the first thing I want to do is go to settings, because that's almost all we're going to talk about today is just this settings block, some settings on your power supply. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that real quick on my phone. And one thing you should remember too is it used to be that the battery power was a real problem. Phones ran down real quick on their power supply. That has gotten much better with the newer phones. Probably if you have 12, 13, or a new 14, you probably will find your battery lasts really as long as you need it to. But just in case it doesn't, we want to make sure that you know what's going on and how to check on these kind of things. So at any rate, I'm going to go back up to this top corner here. You have your symbol right there. It's just a battery symbol. And I'm going to scroll down my screen a bit till I get to battery. When I get to battery, I'm going to touch this little icon on the right-hand side, that little right arrow kite, and it will take me to a screen that you see here. Now, it may take a second or two for it to come up for you. I've been to this before today, but sometimes it takes a few seconds to come up and show you all the information. But what this does is tell me a lot of information about my phone. It tells me about my battery health, so I can touch that little caret on the right. It will take me over to something that says that my maximum capacity on my battery is 99% of what it was when it was new. So it's starting to fade just a hair, but it's probably over a year old now. So uh, that's what it's doing. And then uh, I have the optimized battery charging setup here, and it really says it learns how to charge it best for your use, so you preserve as much of your battery health as you can. So I'm going to go back up here and touch the word battery and go back. When I do that, you can see it now has a little block here that says battery percentage. When I make that green, keep your eye on what happens to my little icon up here in the top right. It now gives me a percentage. It tells me that my phone right now is 81% charged. So that's just a nice little change. It shows you uh, what the percentage is at any time. You can just go down there and look at it. You could sort of tell by the little black uh, in the battery before, but this is a much more exact amount of charging remaining. We can also go down a little bit. You can see it tells you when it was last charged to 100% and where it is now. So it was 100%, and then I started using it and it went down. If you scroll down farther on your screen, it will tell you when you have been most active using it, and then farther down it will tell you which apps it is that are using the power that you are using. And I say this one is for the last 24 hours, and I can touch it here and it'll do the same thing for the last 10 days. So if you're really having a problem with how much battery power you're using, there's some ways you can check to sort of see what the cause might be for that excess battery use. Clearly, if you have an app that is draining a lot, you're going to want to think about, how did I get into that situation? What is it that made it not work well for me in that it's using too much battery power. So in mine, it says Audible. That is an app that I use for listening to books, uh, audiobooks. So when I'm using that, it's obviously using quite a bit of power. And I used it for about an hour this morning while I was doing some exercise. So it's used. I play Wordle, just a game that used some power, and so on down the line. If you have real high battery usage, just take a look at those. It may tell you something you may need to adjust in how you are doing things, just to make sure you preserve your battery power for when you really need it. So let's go back. I'm going to get all the way out of this again, and I'm just going to talk a little bit more about it. Now on my main screen again, you can still see, I can see this percentage here. The other thing you can do to help with your power use is to make sure you turn off apps that you're not using. So I'm just going to go down and open my uh, close app screen. You do that on a phone that has a power button by clicking twice, or the phone that does not have a button, you can just swipe up and hold, and you get into the screen that looks like that. If you haven't checked on my screen operations video, I talk a little bit about how to get to them there. But you get to these, and then you can turn off apps that you are not using. I'm not using the magnifier app right now. I'm not using the phone app. I'm not using the messages app or the mail app or the calendar app or OneDrive. So there's just a whole bunch of these I'm not using. I can just turn them all off. When I do this, they stop using power. And some apps use power to find you. If you've turned on location services, they may be checking all the time for your location, and that takes battery power. So by turning them all off, I make it less likely that it's going to use power. And you can see I had a whole bunch open. So every one of those is using a little bit of power while it's on. Now they're not using power because I've turned them all off. So that's the main things you can do to manage your power supply on your phone and to know how it's working. Again, I just touch the screen. You can now tell mine is down to 80%. It was at 81 and now it's at 80. So I used 1% of the battery power just while I was doing this video. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If it has, come back, take a look at some of the other videos, and we'll see you again. Thanks.